The next installment, we have The Help, which I've had people recommend to me for many years now, but I've just never really got around to watching. I don't really know why. I think it's also like a high school book that some people read and really liked. I just didn't get around to it, but now I have, and it is a pretty good movie, all things considered. My first biggest thought was my favorite, or at least one of my favorite tropes, is the villains, or, well, yeah, I'd say villain or antagonists that are just like so easy to hate, and they give you so much ammo to hate. That when they get their like just desserts, you're just like, yes. It's just so like satisfying. And I think Hilly is a great example of that because she's just so racist and just such an awful person to everyone really. Like she's racist to all the hell to like she's the one pushing for all the colored bathrooms and all that fun stuff, which is really not fun. And also like one of them is like at the front of their house. It's like if you're gonna be racist, isn't the point you want to like hide it? But I guess in kind of a not great way is that the racism is just so normal that they don't need to do that. I mean, it's all bad at the end of the day, and that's just kind of gross and weird, and I hate it. But man, when it starts unraveling, she's like, "Yeah, you've actually ate a pie full of poop," and you're like, "Yes, let's go." Which is a weird thing to be saying, but it's like, yeah, you kind of deserved that. You're kind of just an awful person, and you really needed someone to put you in check to just stop being so openly racist and just an awful human being to anyone who doesn't fit your like middle-aged white woman bridge club playing group. And then she gets it all and the book comes out and you're like, yes, Hilly, that's what you deserve. That's what you get for being racist and an awful person. Especially when Skeeter's mom kind of goes off on her and I'm just like, man, everybody's coming down. Walls are coming down. Even Hilly's mom is like, you're an awful person. Like it's bad when your mom is like, yeah, you deserve that. Which is just it's just so good. It's just so satisfying to watch. It's just I love it with all my heart. Where it's like, man, you just deserved that and you just got everything enough to make me feel so satisfied. It's kind of the inverse of what I talked about in Crazy Stupid Love with Robbie, whereas he just gets away with being an awful person, whereas Hilly is just fully condemned and just like has to be held accountable to her awful actions. And that's what we love to see. It's really what we love to see. Granted, she's not really the only one because there is like the foot girl whose name I'm totally forgetting. I don't know why. It's like Charlotte, maybe. Where it's just like they're just so clicky. Like, yeah, we don't want to talk to you because you supposedly like cheated on her Hilly's old lover with her. And it's like that's the pettiest thing to just like isolate someone from their group with. Like that's like middle school drama stuff where it's like you did this with the person I like and now you can't be friends with anyone I talk to. And you're like, oh my goodness, like grow up. And it's really just like the other two like groups of people, the like Emma Stone group who we'll get to, and then the I think it's Jessica Jason. I really don't know her character's name. I'm forgetting. I don't know why. And it's just like, man, it's nice to see people who aren't racist or are just such a like, just so in need of help that they just have to rely on these people. Celia, that's her name. Celia. I looked it up. But it's really just good to see racists get owned. You know, good to see them have consequences to their actions. But I also really liked Minnie. I just found Minnie such a fun. She was just here for none of it, and was once she crossed the line and was like, yeah, I am just sick of you, she just went off. And I was like, yes, you really are just killing it. Like, you gave a poop pie to your, like, old, like, boss. And it's just like, man, that's also petty, but it's to a racist, so I don't care. It's just so satisfying. Also, I feel like you would taste it if there was poop in it. Like, that's one of those things, like, I don't think, I don't know. I'm not that good at cook. I can't say for any of that, but maybe Minnie's just that good at cook that she can cover actual poop and like get away with it, which is really just impressive. But I also just had a thought through this movie, which is like, we really just basically had slavery still. Like, it wasn't like they were being paid, so it wasn't technically. But like every instance, like, yeah, they're not being treated like actual human beings. They're being discriminated against. They're being paid next to nothing. The people they work for are just 99% of the time horrible people who can't even like raise their own kids at the end of it all. But they're still like, yeah, you aren't deserved enough to like be able to live. You just have to like go hide over here. We don't want you over here because it's not because you're not white. And it's like, man, we really just have not gotten any better, really. We just shifted the things. I mean, obviously, segregation is illegal now, which is good. Very good. But now we have like the don't say gay stuff. And it's like, well, because there was one line that stuck out to me when Skeeter was reading the like, or it wasn't Skeeter, it was one of, someone was like narrating over the like Mississippi laws. So it was like, you can go to jail for like advocating for equality, which is just like a lot of the like stuff in like Florida and Texas, I think Idaho too, and probably other places that I just haven't heard of yet. Where it's like, yeah, if you try to like get your trans kid out of the state, or like you say anything that goes against the like agenda of the state, where they're like, yeah, you can't talk about racism or this or this or this, then you just go to jail or it's a felony. And I'm like, wow, we're just coming back. We've come full circle. And that's really bad. But, I don't know how to follow up on that. It's just depressing. It's like, yep, we really just haven't really changed. One little thing that was also kind of weird was that they were like the little benefit or like the town hall meeting. I don't know where that was held. It didn't look like a church. It was just like all the white ladies in town. They're like, yeah, we're raising money for like African kids, like to give them an education. And I was like, what? Like, that seems like, which may be partially a little like, it was just seems a little hypocritical considering you're being so racist. But you're like, is it just like the far enough that I can't see it, that it like makes it look like you're doing good? But it's like you're still, I don't know. That's why one of the big issues just in general is a lot of people like they focus on the far away things and not like their immediate vicinity. Like, you don't have to check your bridges in front of you. You can just still be racist, but like you have to appear like you care about the world around you. So you just pick somewhere that's far away that you don't have to see or like deal with. Which like those places probably do need people to like help them or like raise money for them. But also like you have problems in your own front yard, or in this case that you're a racist and you need to stop being one, but you're just going to choose to pretend like you care about the rest of the world and just entirely not deal with your racism. Because, it's hard to deal with your racism, but you can spin it all you want. Because Hilly's like, there are real bad people, there are real racists out there. And it's like, yeah, you are that real racist, Hilly. Like, you're the bad one here. You're the bad person. But it's also like, the maids are just the lifeline of this household. Like all these like white women are so like treating him so crappily, but then it's like there's multiple points of it's like these kids just do not know how to function. Because there's the one kid like May Mobley, I think, who just like cannot function as a normal child without having someone to help her because her mother is just like, here you go, Aileen, just go. That's your problem, not mine. Because like she can't. Just the kid's still like wet in the bed, wet in her diaper, and like no one changes it. Kid like doesn't even go to the bathroom, and every time she goes to the bathroom in the movie, it's in the either in the wrong place or both times he's just yoinked up from there, and it's like, oh, okay, that's not good. But it's really just a pretty obvious movie that 90% of people in this movie are racist, or at least like implicitly, because even like Stewart, that like whole romance subplot to kind of start getting into Emma Stone things where she's related because she is like a main character in this movie. It's like that romance was never gonna work. Like there was no way ever that that was going to work from like frame one. Because immediately she like Cedar like checks him and is like, "Wow, you're kind of just annoying." And they like kind of fall in love, and I'm like, "Where did you do this?" Like telling it like it is, and she's basically just critiquing you every time. But you're like, "Yeah, that's you're speaking your mind, and I love that." And it's like, what? Like, what copium are you smoking, dude? And then it comes and he's like, why didn't you tell me you were doing this? You can't change the status quo. Things are fine. And it's like, there it is, boys. We found it. We found the verse racism. Which is just like, yeah. I think he says, it's not what I believe in. And yeah, of course it is. Because you're just the worst, Stuart. It's really just like, I understand why it's there. There is like a romance there, but it's also like, I kind of know the men are going to be bad. Because even earlier, there's like Haley's husband who, when I think it's Yul May, is like, hey, can I get a loan? He just fully like walks up and gets away. He's like, yeah, oh, I guess I'm going to be late, and just walks away. Which is like, wow, you're just the worst, aren't you? Like, he didn't even attempt to humor it. He just went, see ya, I'm out of here. I'm like, oh, okay. That's just not the vibe. Not cool, dude. But yeah, I don't anyone like any of the 99% of the white people in this movie I just kind of hate. Emma Stone's family is kind of dicey at the beginning, but then it's like, well, it's still bad. Her marriage was still bad. But I think I like to do is I think I realized that in a lot of stories, pride and vanity are like the biggest villains, or not villains, but like the biggest causes for someone to like do an awful thing. Because I think of like, which might not make me forget this, like things like Legends of the Galactic Heroes, where it's like, or just like these big like space war anime, where it's like, well, I'm the cool guy. I can't go down without a fight. Like I'm the best one here. I will destroy them. And then they all just die. And I'm like, that's just your hubris getting in the way of you, and you're just keep losing because you refuse to like be like, okay, maybe I've been beat. Maybe check your pride and say, maybe we don't need this. And unfortunately, most people were like, well, I still need this, which is why Constantine got kicked out because his Skeeter's mom was like, well, I kind of have to, because I got a cool place in the town government, I think. I didn't really understand how that town worked. But she's like, well, got to see you. And it's like, well, that's not great. It's just kind of depressing, too. But, yeah. A lot of it's just kind of depressing when you, like, think about it. Because it's like these people, like, really are just trying to make it in society. because they're just selfish. Meanwhile, the help and all the like, just the entire like communities there that are not the exact right definition of like white people, basically, are just like, yeah, you're just not allowed to succeed. We will not allow you to do that. Because like it is black people to an extent, but it's like every other group was also being persecuted because white people were just racist. Like we're just bad. White people are just bad, and we really have not changed a whole lot. People are still assholes, but you know that's why we need accountability. Because that was my other big point, was that really just Hilly, anyone else, they just had no one to hold them accountable. Because Hilly was just like, you stole from me, or you did this, or you did this. It just fully was like perpetuating lies or just like being very inflammatory. And no one was like, oh, wait, have we have anything to substantiate that? Or is she just spewing lies that we have no reason to understand? Because they can just keep being racist and no one's like, well, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. They're just like, well, no one's going to tell me to stop, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Because there's like with Eileen's kid, where it's like, or Aileen, I don't remember which. I think it's either one of those two, where like they just kill her kid. Like they just straight up kill him. They feel like a little bad enough to like send him to a hospital, but they just dump him there, honk, and drive away. And it's like there won't be any consequences for them murdering him. Like they just killed him, ran him over, drove him to the hospital, threw him in the side of the road, said, well, not our problem, and then dipped out. It's like that could literally be like any of the husbands in the town they're living in that are just wandering the streets that feel no remorse, more than likely. And it's just like, man, they really just can get away with anything because no one's there to hold them accountable. And the people that could, they can just be like, well, I'm just going to kill you now. Because no one, again, they won't be held accountable. Like, that's really the end of it all, is there was no one to hold them accountable, so they could just keep being racist. And then they killed Martin Luther King and probably Malcolm X, and then white people really just. It's kind of wild. Like I think about this every so often that like the civil rights movement had its two like biggest leaders were both assassinated. Like they weren't just like died of old age; they both were killed, which to me is just like wild to think about. That like America and like white people had such a resistance to this that they were willing to kill both of the leaders of like the movements toward equality rather than just be like, oh, I'm actually being racist. Like they couldn't just stop for a second to be like, oh, am I the bad guy? Instead, they were like, oh, let's just kill these people who are trying to advocate for something that isn't what we like. And I just think that's just like insane that that's how places are. That's how like society was 60 years ago, I think. Because civil rights was like mid 60s, mid late 60s. It's 2022. See, like 60 years ago or so. That, you could just be openly racist and no one was going to like do anything. And I haven't been in the South long enough to determine if that is still the case. But this takes place in Mississippi, and I feel like Mississippi is one of those like bottom 5 states in like most things still. It's one of those in that general area that is still like one of the worst in education. It's like, oh. It's one of those like I would like to go down there, like go see what life is like down there. But I also am like, maybe I kind of don't. Because it feels like a dicey idea. But, yeah. I feel like I'm more just talking about racism in the past and in the present than I am about the movie. Let's get to the Emma Stone part because I said I would get to that and then just fully didn't. My first note, the very first I have for this movie was when she goes to I think it's the Jackson Journal and like uses a rejection letter that's like, you need to gain some experience and then come apply again. But she uses that as a positive. I was like, wow, that is a power play and also incredibly smart. Because that's just, I don't think that would work like ever anymore. But that is like a smart idea to kind of sell yourself on it, where it's like, well, I need experience. And this place said that I was good and promising. I just needed some more of that, which is just kind of sick. I was like, yeah, that's cool. Curly hair, Emma Stone, good fit, good look. We appreciate it. I didn't really like when they used the hair thing on her because I was like, you just got default white woman hair. And I was like, I don't really vibe with that. But then it lasts like 5 seconds and you're like, yeah, let's go. Another thing is that there's a lot of racism, but there's also like a whole lot of sexism in this movie. Like it's mainly about the racism, but there's also like, yeah, women are not being treated well here either. But a lot of it is also like, I'm getting back to racism and sexism. Here we go. Is that they're like, a lot of them are kind of perpetuating it. Because it's like Minnie, when she works for Celia, is like, you don't like, you don't sit with me during lunch. That's not how this works. Like, kind of perpetuating the system. And then the whole bridge club is just perpetuating this, like, you don't need to work. You just need to find a husband and make kids. And it's like, oh, that's like really the sad part too. Is a lot of it is just like perpetuating the same like bad ideas. And then when someone tries to break out, you're like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to go live your own life? It's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be in the kitchen having kids. And it's like, man, it just kind of sucks. That's really just my main point. This is a very good movie. It's very just interesting to see kind of multiple perspectives on it. But then I'm also like, yeah, racism is really bad still. People are just kind of the worst. My other thought, because I've been around like religion a lot, is that like it works, but man, every big like societal problem has spun the Bible somehow to like be an agent of justifying evil beliefs, which I feel like is a problem that should be addressed. Besides just being like, no, that's not what the Bible says. Like, I feel like there's something wrong if it happens with like basically every big event where they're like, well, the Bible says we can be racist or we can have slaves. I don't think I should say about slavery. It's like, that seems like a problem to me that it keeps being used like this. But I'm no religious expert. I'm just observing and being like, wow, that's something that's a little weird that it keeps happening. We did have the Crusades. Let's see if I have more notes. More white people's worst. I have a couple of like quotes that kind of Haley uses. Just like that are her justifications. There's like always the protect our children, which is used now because it's like, well, we can't expose our kids to that their pastors, white people's pastors, racist. That's not good. We gotta protect our kids. She sees the nice to have your own. I'm talking about the like colored bathrooms, and it's like, you really are like the separate but equal, and it's like, no, it's really not. Like, none of that works. You're just huffing the copium, being like, yeah, you're getting your own thing. That's cool, right? Appreciate it. Appreciate it. And I think it's also they kind of use as like to check your not like privilege, but like to kind of check where you're at. Especially Hilly, where it's like, oh, you like your bathroom with like the threatening aura hovering around her. And it's like, you gotta chill, woman. You really gotta chill. But she doesn't until at the end when she just gets called out for everything. And you're just like, yes, everyone, go off. Take her down. Put her in her place. She needs to be held accountable. She cannot keep getting away with it. I think one day I might just rank every, because I have like many characters that are like fit in the same trope of Hilly, where it's like you just hate them so much and then they get exactly what they deserve, and it just feels so good. And I just love that trope. I just love feeling satisfied that an awful person is getting what they deserve. I'm glad I watched this movie. It's definitely really good. I feel like it's one of those I probably should have seen earlier. Just like I'm surprised I didn't see it in like high school or something. Because I feel like it's one of those that I remember. Like I haven't heard as many people talk about it now, but I feel like in high school I had a lot of people talk about it, but it was never something that was like exposed to me. And I don't read enough independent of classes anymore to be like, oh, I'm gonna go read this book, which is probably a problem that I should address. But that's for a future problem when I don't have like 8 books to read for a class that I have to finish at like the same week period. But we got a whole life ahead of me and a whole lot of books to read. So, and I saw the movie at least, People are like, always got to read the book. But at least I saw the movie, picked up on the themes, had a good thought with myself about racism. Because this isn't related to the movie at all, but it kind of is that in like 2022 so far, I think I've had more like exposure to like civil rights era like movies and like media and like just historical stuff than I have in like the entirety of my life, which I'm realizing is kind of very sad. Because I know in like high school and or really just like in American history or just like history classes in general, was a lot of mine would be get to like the early America to like the Civil War or like the freedom of slaves, and then the semester would end and I just wouldn't follow up on that. And I think the closest I did was I took a Cold War class, which would fit in the era of civil rights, but I feel like it kind of just focused on the Cold War part of it and not the like civil rights is happening right now, and that's probably a big deal we should talk about. And then it was like, well, we're just gonna keep talking about like nukes and like tension between the U.S. and the USSR and all that fun stuff. But I think that's also like a U.S. history problem in general, like kind of how we teach it. Is I feel like there's a lot of, I mean, for starters, there's like Christopher Columbus, who like as a kid, like you don't really know he's doing anything bad, and then now I'm like, oh, he was just the worst. But it's also like it kind of makes me wonder of like what else was I just not taught that like is very important to like the culture of America. And I feel like I'm seeing it more now because I'm actively involved in it. But it's like, where are those gaps that I'm still missing from the past? Because I feel like there definitely are some, at least in like deeper strokes. Because I think the broad strokes of it now I've kind of covered. But I feel like there are little events and pieces of things that I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know that happened because I was just simply never taught about it. So I guess that means for me, I need to study up on my history and on other cultures. So I'll go do that because it's a crazy world we live in. And if more and more states keep it off in this don't say gay stuff, we're going to have a very bad time. But that's a whole other discussion that is not related to, is not directly involved with the help that I need to, one, do more research in first. So basically, I'm ending this off with I have a lot of work to do.